Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Anjanette Lesher, and welcome to the Sustainability in IP panel. I'm the Director of Intellectual Asset Management at Corning Incorporated, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator for today's session. On behalf of the panel, I would like to thank the IPO Education Foundation for organizing this important session and inviting us to participate. In 2020, Corning Incorporated published its first sustainability report. This report highlighted Corning's sustainability journey over the past 170 years with an emphasis on safety, innovation, and community engagement. In recent years, we've expanded our scope to include a broader focus on renewable energy, reducing waste, and designing and manufacturing products with sustainable attributes in partnership with our customers. Our 1971 invention of emissions control substrates started a new era that continues to make air cleaner and healthier. Our 2020 deployment of resources to support the fight against COVID-19 helped create healthier environments for those on the front line. As our people keep making a positive difference in the world, our culture also ensures that we are a company built to last. Going forward, Corning will continue to develop and patent technologies that use more sustainable resources, consume less energy, help clean and protect the environment, and require less harmful materials. Let's get started with introductions from our panelists. Danielle, let's start with you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. So my name is Danielle Merfeld, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for GE's renewable energy businesses. So my background, I'm an electrical engineer, and I've been working in research and development in a lot of different facets of the energy sector. I started off with LEDs and moving, the lighting industry towards this more energy efficient approach. And I just got hooked. So now I'm working deeply in the energy sector, innovating new ways to make energy cleaner, more resilient. And I work in a business that gets to do that while we focus on our own business operations and being sustainable. I also lead our sustainability commitment across the business. So I get to see a lot of our operations and factories and ways we're not just changing what we make for the world to use differently, but also how we make it.
Great. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you for joining us. Julie?
Thank you. So my name is Julie Willoughby, and I'm really excited to be here. And thank you for this opportunity. I am the Chief Scientific Officer at CERC. CERC is a startup company where our mission is for you to wear the same clothes for life. And with that, we're taking the circular economy where we're continually recycling over and over your textiles, and I'll go into more of that later. My career's been in chemical engineering over the last 30 years, and I've worked in various industries, from the chemical industry, the pulp and paper industry. I was in academia working on cellulosic fibers, and before I came to CERC, I was at Nike. So very different fields, but all related to chemical engineering and science and technology, and I've loved it. I like to say that all roads led to CERC. I'm in this wonderful opportunity to take the waste that many of the industries I worked in have created and make that waste now valuable resources.
Great. Thank you, Julie. David?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Dave Doyle, and I'm the Vice President of Legal for Patents and Global Supply here at Cody. I'm a registered patent attorney, and I've spent most of my career in private practice as a patent attorney before going to work for Avon Cosmetics and then Cody. At Cody, Cody is the world's third largest beauty company with brands like CoverGirl, Max Factor, Gucci perfumes. We sell worldwide. And my role here at Cody is to support end-to-end really sustainability, everything from research and development, understanding and patenting and licensing new technologies, to helping our procurement and supply chain make sure that what we do, the products that we make and how we make them, to quote Danielle, is more and more sustainable over time. It's great to be here. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to have all of you from diverse industries. So I'm looking forward to the discussions. So we'll move on to our first question, starting with the fundamentals. How does your company define sustainability? So David, we'll start with you at Cody.
Sure. I'll speak for myself and then maybe for my company. One of the best definitions I've seen of sustainability is focusing on meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. When we talk about what Cody does as a sustainable company, it's been a key driver in our turnaround. It's been a key focus for our new CEO who came on September 1st of last year. And our Cody Sustainability Report, which just came out last week, emphasizes 3 areas. Emphasizes the idea of beauty that lasts in 3 particular areas. First, the beauty of our people, to create a more inclusive business and a more inclusive society. Second, to create the beauty of our product, to drive product innovation with sustainability and a circular economy in mind with what we use. And third, to think about the beauty of our planet, to think about sustainably sourcing materials, to think about sourcing materials in a way that's transparent and preserves human rights and human dignity.
Great. Thank you, David. Danielle?
Yeah, so we are an energy business. In fact, across GE, about 1/3 of the world's power, or mostly electricity, comes from our equipment all around the world. So we've been in this game a long time. And the way we think about sustainability within the energy part of GE is essentially rooted in carbon emissions or greenhouse gas emissions. So you might not know this, but more than 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the planet come from the energy sector. Now, most of that's fossil fuel based. Only about 20% of that is electricity, but the vision to get to a net zero economy and net zero energy system is that we're going to go from 20% of things running on electricity to more like 70 or 80% of our energy systems run on electricity. And all that electricity needs to be clean: wind, solar, hydro power. And then the rest of it is made with a clean molecule. Instead of fossil fuels that are based on carbon, it would be something like hydrogen or a derivative of hydrogen. Even things that are using hydrogen today, like ammonia, they're kind of dirty processes. So how do we make all of those energy-based or fuel-based processes much cleaner? This is one of the sectors that can make the biggest difference when it comes to the survivability of our planet in terms of our ecosystem. So it's kind of an exciting space to work. And that's really the root of how we think about sustainability. I must, though, mention, we also use energy. We're not just making equipment that makes energy. We make our own emissions, running our factories, driving around to get to work and to go to meetings. So we measure our own footprint along the way as well. So we think of it, there's different ways to think about your emissions: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And that just means, are you making those emissions directly? Are you making them indirectly? Do your products make those emissions out in the field? Or maybe your suppliers create those emissions before the components come to your factories? All of that we measure, and we are on a path to reducing it at every turn. And of course, our customers and our suppliers are too. So we're part of one big ecosystem measuring sustainability in these concrete ways.
Oh, great. I'm already learning a lot. Thank you, Danielle.
Sure.
And Julie.
Yes. So how do we define sustainability? I'm going to start with really what starts after, and there's this huge problem out there that the fast fashion industry really has created. Over the last 20 years, clothes keep getting cheaper and cheaper, and the seasons become smaller and smaller, and there's constant revolving around clothing. So the consumer has ready access. So ready to wear garments has created the ability for every consumer to be able to refresh their wardrobe. But what happens when those clothes are made in supply chains that are just pushing product through, and the clothes don't last as long? And so the average consumer wears their clothing about 7 times. So I'm sure many of you have clothes in your closet that you never touch, or they're overflowing with clothes. And then what happens to all those clothes that go to, say, Goodwill? You think you're donating your clothes, but they really don't. I think it's 10% of all clothes that go to second-hand stores are resold. And so most of them are on a one-way trip to the landfill or to be burned. And just for context, every year, about $42 billion of inventory is in the US is burned or to the landfill. So that's a tremendous amount of inventory that we want to put back into the economy. So to me personally, sustainability means mindful consumption. So using less, reusing, like there's Patagonia, you may see they have this take back program where you can send your clothes to, it's their brand called Warnwear. And if it's good enough, they'll resell it. So those are great. The closets in the sky, those are great concepts. But there's so much of those clothes that they can't be reused, and they will be, if it wasn't for solutions like CERC, they would be just landfill. So what we do is we recycle them, and we use enhanced recycling. So it is those 3 classic R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle, but we're ensuring that we're recycling the stream. And then redefining waste or unwanted clothing as an untapped resource to make new fibers. So we'll take that clothing, break it down into new fibers that can be made into new yarns and new clothing. So it's not like using and trying to use something that it doesn't feel and look new. So you will essentially have the same clothes. You can wear the same clothes for life, but they'll be put into different phases. The other, in addition to cleaning up the aftermath of fast fashion and apparel to really reduce the greenhouse gases, the apparel industry is, you may not know, it contributes double of what the cost of fuel for the aviation and maritime. So it's 10% of greenhouse gases. And we're really taking strides within our company. We use chemical processing and mechanical processing, which traditionally could have been less energy efficient processes, and everything that we're designing to is to be with having zero waste and zero liquid discharge at the forefront.
Thanks, Julie. I can see we have a lot to learn already from this panel. Thank you all. So let's move on to your organization's sustainability goals, and you all touched a little bit on your sustainability goals, but Danielle, GE has over 125-year history of leading innovation to develop solutions that help build a more sustainable future. What are some of the current sustainability goals that GE is focused on?
Yeah, so we have we have a good history here, and so we hold ourselves very accountable to always getting better, because being over 100 years old, you got to imagine that there's parts of our past that we look back on and say, wow, that was wasteful, or yeah, this could be done better now. So that's the biggest part of embracing sustainability, is being able to be okay with the change that it requires. We make so many of the world's jet engines, and guess what? We're not going to be able to make those jet engines the same way going forward. So at the highest level across GE, we have a really clear goal, which is we want to be a net neutral company from a carbon perspective or from an emissions perspective by 2050. Now that's kind of far away. So if that's our only thing that we put out there, it's not enough. We have to think about, what does that mean along the way? What are we going to do in the next 10 years? So I'll give an example of something much more short term, and that is our renewable energy business has a carbon neutrality goal. That means we as a business will be carbon neutral, and we actually achieved it starting last year. It's over everything that we control. It's a little easier for us because our products don't emit any carbon. Harder for my peers in other parts of GE that sell, big pieces of equipment that burn fuel. We luckily can use nature. But everything, how we run our factories, we're putting solar on roof, we're sourcing only clean electricity, but we're also reducing waste. Company-wide, we're reducing waste and water usage. And we've got these year by year, decade by decade goals to make sure that we're on track to that net zero goal in 2050. And that's probably something everyone should always look for when they hear about corporate goals. Is it's great to have the vision, and that's really what it is. It can't be as much a goal as a vision to achieve something 30 years away, but there's got to be those big steps along the way that you measure yourself against. So those are our high level sustainability goals across GE.
Important goals that I'm glad to hear about. David, Cody has just recently published its 2021 sustainability report. What are some of the goals that we can look forward to reading about?
Thanks, Jeanette. I think along the lines of what you've heard from Julie and Danielle, we aim to lower our footprint, to use more materials that are sustainable and to upcycle and recycle materials whenever possible. Looking at the three areas in our report at a high level, again, we talk about the beauty of our product, the beauty of our planet, and the beauty of our people. When we talk about the beauty of our product, we start by listening to the science and we listen to our consumers. So we look at what the latest data tells us in terms of what ingredients make sense or don't make sense to continue to use, what delivers efficacy while also being a sustainable material. We listen to our consumers, we listen to our retailers' concerns about the use or non-use of certain materials. And that moves into IP because that then prompts us to make certain choices of what materials we choose to use or not use going forward. The processes by which we bring those to market, and the processes by which we market the materials themselves. I'll give you an example. This is a product we recently divested a company called the Wella Company, but the Wella Company is a professional beauty company. This is a product called We Do. It's a sustainable line that was just introduced in 2018. And if you look at the bottle, you see sort of these promises in action. What is it? Well, it's 94% recycled plastic in the bottle. It's 100% recyclable in the bottle. The product is phthalate free. The product is sulfate free. The product is vegan, and the product is cruelty free certified. In other words, that it was not tested on animals. What this does from an IP perspective and a chemical engineering perspective, I'm sure Julie will appreciate, is it gives us both challenges and opportunities. It's funny, our CEO talks about sustainability as being the driver of innovation. Bayer Crop Science, I just saw today, talking about innovation being the driver of sustainability. Both are true. For us, we have to make our products more sustainable, but we also need to deliver on a consumer promise. If this doesn't work as a shampoo, it's not doing anyone any good. So how do we do that? And the way that we do that is we take new materials that are more sustainable, that are more favored by by our consumer base and our retailers. And we find ways to make those materials work in a way that we didn't think was possible before. We might have had a material that worked great, but it was really costly from an environmental perspective. We take something that's more sustainable, it may not deliver the kind of performance we'd expect. So we've got to think really hard about how we get there with our formula, how we get there with a combination of other materials. That's what we talk about beauty of our product. I'll go more quickly on the other ones. On beauty of our planet, what are we doing? Well, we're looking at energy reduction, just like Danielle talked about. We've got lots of factories around the world. We make mascaras, we make shampoos, and we make fragrances. So we're trying to cut down our energy footprint. We've announced a really exciting partnership with a company called LanzaTech, where if you look at a bottle, for example, this is our Katy Perry perfume, and 95% of this bottle is ethanol. Ethanol is typically sourced from sugarcane or sugar beet or some kind of a plant source. It can be resource intensive to drive that out of the plant source, and it leaves some waste materials. If we instead could get some of the material, the chemical material we need to make that ethanol from another process, from an off gas or from another process that's already running on another industrial process, then we can take something that would have gone to landfill or would have gone into the atmosphere and turn it into a perfume, which is pretty cool. Finally, I would talk a little bit about the beauty of our people. Why is that important in the beauty industry? Well, it's super important in the beauty industry because we want to represent everybody. We want to represent the fact that we have genderless products. We want to represent the fact that we want to give everyone the opportunity to be who they are at work and in society. And so that's an important mission for us to support representation and diversity in the workforce, but also to provide products that give people freedom of expression.
Sounds like some good tips for consumers to look for before purchasing their beauty products. So thank you. Julie, as you have so proudly shown on your wall back there, Cirque Technologies' mission is to protect the planet from the cost of clothing. How does this translate to sustainability goals?
Yes, and so I spoke a little bit before about just what the cost of clothing is and where many people don't realize how large a contributor that the apparel industry is to greenhouse gas emissions. And that's coming from really the amount of excess textiles that are out there in the forms of clothing, but also if anyone in the audience has ever made their own clothes, and so their own clothing, you have a lot of fabric scrap. And obviously, like I've sewn all my life, and when I was taught sewing growing up, I was in a place where you can never throw that fabric away. So I've carried this fabric all around. And literally that scrap we can take that scrap. So instead of just throwing it in the garbage, I can take that scrap and break it down into new fibers. And what does that mean is that we look at, instead of throwing it away, is we have this goal of what we say internally is a big audacious goal. And this goal is 10-10-100, and it's the motto of our entire team of 10-10-100. And we'll even sign our emails that way. And what that means is, and there's really small pictures in the back on my wall, is by the year 2030, we're going to recycle 10 billion garments. And by recycling 10 billion garments, that's why 10 billion, except 10-10-100 sounds nice. It actually represents 10% of the amount of apparel that's made on an annual basis. So annually, we'll recycle 10 billion garments, and that's going to save 100 million trees. And where do trees come from making garments? When you look at the fabrics like viscose or rayon, that raw material comes from trees. So there's deforestation that happens in the apparel industry to use wood into making clothing. And the same with cotton. So cotton from virgin cotton. Cotton's a really dirty crop. We love the way it feels, and it's breathable, and it makes us comfortable. And there's all this cotton that's being burnt because when you're done with your clothes. So we'll take that cotton that was once considered not usable, and we'll break it down into new cotton called a synthetic cotton, but it really feels and breathes. It's used instead of the wood and the trees that goes into making rayon and viscose. And there's actually a very sustainable cellulosic fiber called lyocell, and that's what we make. And then it's made from your old clothes. And the same thing on your polyester. So I often get asked, well, someone's already recycling polyester, and that's from bottles. So when you go to the store and you say this is made with 100% polyester recycled or whatever composition of polyester, it's from bottles. And we believe bottles should stay bottles, and we'll use textiles for recycling the polyester. So recycled textiles into new clothing versus bottles into clothing. And we'll let the bottles be recycled into bottles. And so 10-10-100 is what we're striving to, and so we're creating that technology to make it happen.
Thanks, Julie. Very significant and important goals from all three companies, so thank you for sharing that. To tie all of this together, let's talk about how these goals translate to IP. So Julie, we'll stay with you. Cirque aims to entirely eliminate the demand for raw ingredients needed to make clothing by creating new clothes entirely out of old ones. Is this where Cirque captures its intellectual property?
It is. And so I'm gonna hope, this is just your average 50/50 polyester cotton t-shirt. So it's in a small format because when we do lab work, we need smaller pieces of clothing to put into our reactors that process it. So these are almost like pressure cookers that where we take out the polyester. So we take out the polyester, and after we take out the polyester, all we're left with is this cotton t-shirt. And wow. So you can see how it's pinned, and the reason it's pinned is because the thread that was being used was polyester. And so I didn't really explain what our process is, but we turn the polyester to liquid. We liquefy it. And by liquefying it, we can extract out the building blocks that make your polyester clothing. And so then we'll repolymerize it and make new fibers. This cotton skeleton, this is what we'll then take and chop it up and spin into new cellulosic yarns. And doing all that is really taking, kind of combining this new invention. So we are proud we have a healthy patent portfolio in this area, and that's important to ensure that we have investors that feel confident in investing in us, and we need them to invest in us so that we continue the work of demonstrating that our process and our product and our business model is viable. And then when we build upon that IP, how are we actually doing that is to really combine these industries into non-obvious solutions. So how do you take textiles, how do you take chemical processing, how do you take paper and pulp processing, which that's what we're doing, and we're combining it into really a new industry.
I would imagine also the proprietary processes that you use, not only are you capturing the uniqueness of CERC technology by patents, but also trade secrets and know-how.
That is correct. So yes, that's a great point, is that IP, intellectual property, is beyond just patents. It's about, us being able to see the connections and what does trade secret mean, and what does that know-how mean? It's confidential information. So when we have people come into our facilities, we do have to be careful about that. We also believe, there's a tremendous amount of open innovation out there, and I believe in open innovation and believe in ideas really kind of spinning into new technologies. But we have to also protect it from a standpoint of ensuring that we can be competitive.
Thank you for expanding on that. Danielle, as GE is committed to innovating technologies for global decarbonization, as you had earlier mentioned, how does this translate to intellectual property?
Yeah, so this is a great way to think about intellectual property, because as Julie was just saying, it's not just patents, it's also know-how, trade secrets, and I would say the most practical way to consider how do we decarbonize the planet is how do you make it good for everybody? That means good for people breathing air, living on the planet for sure, but also good for business, good for governments who want to create jobs, good for companies that want to invest their money to have innovation that pays back, because inventing new things costs money. So how do we get them to see this as a positive investment and not just, deployment of cash that they could have used as profit, right? So when I think about innovation in the space of clean energy or renewable energy, probably the best picture I could paint in your mind is for offshore wind. So we just launched a big offshore wind turbine that is about 15 megawatts in size. So that might not sound like it means anything to you, but let me just paint a picture of what this turbine looks like. It's about as tall as the Eiffel Tower. It makes enough power with one blade going around one time to power about 2 homes for a couple days. And the blades themselves, one blade, remember there's three, one blade is in this case, the one we just launched is 107 meters. So that's the entire length of a football field here in the US plus the end zones, one blade. These are the largest machines ever built by humans in history, right? So that is a feat of engineering accomplishment that, by the way, cost a lot of money to design and prototype and test and build. We had to build factories to do things for the first time ever. Those blades alone, and that's just one part of the system, were a tremendous amount of investment and innovation. So companies will invest this money to make a good product that lasts a long time and creates a lot of power for the customer that's going to buy it and make electricity and put it onto the grids for us to use in our homes when we plug in, or factories that use electricity. But they want to see the investment come back. And the way they can do that is by owning the technology so that their competitors have to find a new way to do it. They maybe block other people from doing it their way, or in some cases, there's really not a better way, and your competitors will license that from you. So we have plenty of technology that we actually share with our competition because we can make money doing that. And frankly, it's also great for the planet, for everybody to have the best idea at their disposal. And we license from competitors as well. So creating a marketplace for ideas that supports and drives the innovation that frankly we need to go faster and to deploy more clean energy. It kind of is this big cycle of support and innovation. You know, if you don't drive a business value, you're not going to get businesses involved. So that's one way to think about it. One other example I'll give you, and I'll stay with the blades. There's so many great examples, but I'll stick with that one because you've got that picture in your mind. Imagine that these turbines live about 20 to 40 years, not even so much the big ones offshore, but even the ones onshore. So after 30 years, 40 years, maybe even after 20 years, the blades can just be replaced. You can put a new blade on and keep most of it the same. Saves you a lot of energy and manufacturing and materials content. But what happens to those old blades? So most of these blades that we're taking off now were made 20 or 30 years ago. They have polyester in them as what originally was a resin, glass fiber, sometimes carbon fiber, glue to hold parts of them together. So the idea is, how do we take that blade material once you take the blade down? Certainly, I think what was the process was people would just put them in landfills. That's a terrible idea, especially considering how many blades are going to be out there as we scale to a clean energy future. We can't afford it, not just because we don't have enough landfill space, which might be a part of the problem, but more so because that's a lot of material that we spent money to extract and refine and use. If we can put that into the process again, or use it for a different process, that's even better. So today, the process we use to recycle blades is we work with partners, so they chop it up, and now it's a bunch of pellets of combinations of composite material is what they mean by some glass, some polyester, some pieces of carbon or plastic sticking in there, some glue, and they use it as sort of a starting material. It replaces some material and some fuel in a process called cement kiln processing. So it's like a big oven that in a tube that turns in a circle, and you put your stuff in one end, and at the other end, the stuff comes out that they call clinker, and it's the beginning material for cleaner cement. So we can use that, work with a cement company. And now when we're pouring cement for our towers, the next wind turbines, it's made from a lower greenhouse impact material. So that's semi-circular, I like to think about it. We're reusing, but there's some waste there too. So the other big innovation that, again, we want to use to drive value for the company is just only use recyclable material. Thermoplastics is great. You use less glue, they're lighter, they can be longer. You can actually make more power for less cost. And when you're done with it, you can actually break that blade down and make another new blade. Zero waste. So that's how we're starting the next generation of 20 years of blades. And those are the kind of things that save us money. We're not wasting glue, or we're not having excess scrap. We're making things more efficiently so that our material costs are lower. We have a better profit as a company. And oh, by the way, we get cleaner energy faster, safer, and the planet is not as impacted by what we're doing. So those are just two examples where, you know, investment in innovation being anchored by the IP gives us differentiation in the market and drives us to do more of it.
I like what you said, that IP supports and drives innovation. So it's not meant to not be shared. It's meant to be shared, licensed, cross-licensed. And And if I'm not mistaken, I think there is a picture of you with one of these turbans on your LinkedIn page.
Oh yeah, probably one of my favorites is me sitting on top of one. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to see a real picture of one of these turbines, it's on Danielle's page, LinkedIn page. So thank you both so much. I would like to conclude this panel with closing thoughts or key takeaways from the both of you. What can the audience do to live a more sustainable lifestyle? And Danielle, we'll keep it with you to start.
Yeah, so I would say wherever you have a choice between something more sustainable or less sustainable, choose the more sustainable route. I mean, it sounds silly and easy, but you'd be surprised at how many times you either aren't paying attention to the fact that you have a choice or you aren't looking for the choice. But then beyond that, and this is just for everyone's sake, individual choices alone aren't going to be enough. So if there is an opportunity for you to get involved in being a bigger voice through your community or through a student group, you know, lobbying for change at a bigger level, whether it's government or municipal or your local power plant, those kind of things have to happen, and they will only happen when groups of people say they want change. So don't think of this as what you can do and you have to change your life and then maybe we'll get better. We kind of need both. You have to take individual action, but you also have to be a part of something bigger.
Great. I love that. Thank you. And Julie, takeaways for the audience?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. I love what Danielle said, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think, you know, it does. It takes a village. It takes a community. It takes, you know, it takes numbers to make this systemic change that we have to make in order to really do traction and get from a state of mind where people think we're doomed to that we can't have a meaningful impact to slow the effects of climate change and global warming. So, you know, I think though individually, you know, if you don't be kind of a mindful and thoughtful consumer, you know, and what you're using, it is very important to think about, you know, do I really need this? Do I need this item? Is it going to make my life better? If the answer is yes, then you need it. Is it going to make my me experience more enjoyment in my life? Well, then yes, but use it responsibly and take it and keep it, and take care of it, and just remember that all these practices that you do, be at the forefront of making these changes, not just in your individual patterns, but in when you go out to work. So, you know, we have individuals that have been making sure that we're recycling, making sure that even if the city doesn't offer it, that we start it, and that when we start requesting it, then it starts happening at a city level. So you can make a difference. It's not going to completely change the way that global warming is taking root and everything that we're doing, but you can make a difference, and you can make a difference with individual contributions, and your choices do matter. And as your choices matter, then the big companies, then you demand from the Nikes of the world that you only want to use sustainable materials. And then Nike, with its brain power, can do that. You know, they make those initiatives. They see what the consumer wants. So if you don't practice as a consumer using more sustainable materials, then the big companies, the packaging companies, aren't going to create it, because they need to. They're making their business match to consumer demand. So as you demand it, that the traction comes. So just remember that you have that individual power to demand more sustainable goods, more sustainable business practices from the companies that hire you, and that it can make a difference.
Thank you, Julie, so much. Thank you all, Danielle, Julie, David, for leading these important efforts in sustainability. And what I took away is we all have a personal responsibility to make a difference, but we're all in this together. So thank you so much. I will close by also thanking IPO Education Foundation again for organizing this important topic. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.